We go live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marion Todd. So excited for this. Love your books.
Thank you.
Start us off with an introduction to you and your books, Marion.
Okay, I'm Marion Todd, as Kaz says. Of course, if I'd been properly prepared, I would have had all the books in a nice row. But the latest book I write a police procedural series set in St Andrews in Scotland with a female detective who's called Claire Mackay. And book 8 in the series has just been published, and it's called Bridges to Burn. And it was good fun to write. It had its difficult moments, but yeah, and the first in the series, See Them Run, was shortlisted for a Bloody Scotland Scottish debut crime novel of the year in 2020. So there's 8 now, and I've just sent book 9 off to my editor, and I'm waiting nervously for the edits for that. So that's me.
They are, it'll be fantastic because all 8, I think I've missed one, annoyingly, in the series that I've not read. I thought it was up to date, and then I started reading. Where had I got to? I don't know. What's 3 back?
No, that'd be either Old Bones Lie or Next in Line.
I had Next in Line, but I haven't got Old Bones Lie.
Okay. I really enjoyed, actually. Old Bones, I think, might be one of my favourites, just because of the plot, which came from listening to a radio broadcast about a kidnapping. And it was so chilling, so terrifying that I thought, I really want to write about something like this. So that's where Old Bones Lie came from.
I'm going to go back and buy that then.
Copy.
Sarah said, "Hi, Kaz and Marion."
Hello.
Donna is evidently only looking at you because she said, "Good evening, beautiful ladies."
Donna, I feel like an old lavatory brush tonight, so thank you very much for that.
Compliment, won't we? So this one, because I was trying to think of how to review this and how to interview you, because we're like so far into a series, we don't want to give any spoilers.
Yeah, and there's a lot. It's very hard to talk about it without spoiling.
Very hard because like the characters develop as well. So even if I asked you questions about some of the characters, I might be giving away. So I was like, how do I? But like the premise of this one, there's some quite kind of tricky subjects there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started out, it didn't end up being the book I intended to write. My idea, I've tried this a couple of times and I can't do it, was to write about cuckooing, which for anyone who doesn't know is where a vulnerable person is exploited, usually by taking over their house so that an organised crime group can use it for kind of selling drugs and so on, that sort of thing. And I really wanted to write about this in this book. And it's such a cruel thing to do. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just think it's unbearably cruel to take over someone's life and treat them that way. So, your home should be the place where you're safe. So, but I started to think about who the vulnerable people in society are, and it struck me that there's a kind of thing at both ends of the age range where we've got, let's say, teenagers or youngsters who are very tech savvy. They're very quick with computers and the modern world and all the rest of it, but they don't have that kind of the life experience that makes you a bit more worldly wise to people who might be trying to take advantage of you. And at the other end of the age scale, you have the older people who do have that worldly wisdom, but the technology age has kind of swept over them, and they're kind of, would you look at this bit of hair? It's 3 times I've told that behind. The technology age has kind of left them behind a bit, and they're not really up for all the kind of techie scams and things like that. And I thought, so we've got vulnerabilities at both ends of the age range there. So I started out thinking, I want to have this teenage girl who's kind of been exploited. And I also want to look at someone who's older. And that's kind of the two crimes in the book, which seem separate when you start, but as the book progresses, they do begin to knit together to an extent, and it becomes not entirely two separate investigations. Will that do?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I think it's kind of hard to deal with those two vulnerabilities though in a sensitive way. You did it really well, but I think
Well,
it's quite
that's kind.
hard to tread
Thank you.
that line, isn't it, of like
Yeah.
delving enough into it to make it a crime novel, but
I'm not one for being too gritty or gruesome or explicit, and it's tricky. It's a bit like writing sex scenes, which I can't really do. I sort of gloss over all the exciting bits, and then they had a cup of tea or something like that. Um, I try to kind of give just enough information to let the reader know that this is actually a tragic or a sad or whatever emotion I want them to invoke type of event. And it's the sort of thing you have to go back over and think, have I got this right? And then an editor, this is where editors are very good, because they'll come in and they'll say, I think you need a little bit more here, or I think that's just right, or I think we could maybe do with a bit less because that doesn't balance the rest of the book. Sometimes you need that other person when you step back and they can say, they can see what you can't see because you're too close to it. It's a tricky one.
I'm going to ask you some more questions in a minute, but in the meantime, Monique Robertson has said hi, Marion and Kaz.
Monique, you made it. Hello.
Oh, you know Monique.
Well, Monique messaged earlier to say what time was it, and I very stupidly didn't put the time on the video because I couldn't remember what it was. So it's a mystery.
Sarah Blackburn says she loves your mug.
Thank you, Sarah.
And also that she had no idea of cuckooing until you wrote the book.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, yeah, I say it didn't really. I sort of there's a kind of similar thing, but I couldn't go full cuckoo. It makes me very unhappy to think about it. And books should be fun to write, even though you are killing people in different ways.
Patsy's here. She's
Hi, Patsy.
she says she's halfway through and a cat has already got his teeth into it. And she's meeting you on the 14th of May.
Oh, I think that's when I'm in Kirkcaldy. And get me, I'm sharing a kind of event with JD Kirk. So there'll be like about 1 million people to see him and a couple to see me, because he's so fabulous. I've been on a panel with him before.
He has had it with Barry.
He's just a laugh. It's good fun. Yeah, it'd be nice to see you there, Pat.
It will. Wow, that's great. You two together on the stage. That's going to be fab.
I'm just going to sit back and let him, I'll just be fangirling him, let him do all the work.
Scotland gets all the best book events.
We do.
It's because there's such good authors up there. Do you feel like, because Scottish crime fiction has been like a well-known force for a really long time, hasn't it?
Yeah. Tartan noir is a well-used phrase. I think we have two of the most successful, most prolific, most famous, most fabulous authors in the world in Val McDermott and Ian Rankin. And they're the kind of standard to which we would all like to aspire. And they kind of set the ball rolling.
I think going on from that, do you feel like that you're kind of putting St Andrews on the map with your kind of crime novel? Not that people don't know about it, do you know what I mean? Because it's a well-known city. I'm just saying, like, with your crime novels, it's like now people think of you for that little corner of Scotland.
That's it would be nice if that was the case. I'm not the first. T.F. Muir has a very successful St Andrews series, and Tara Collins also writes. She calls St Andrews, I think, maybe Castleford or something like that, but it is clearly St Andrews. But I kind of thought, because I was a fan of the Inspector Morse, or the Morse novels, but the Morse TV series as well. Oxford was so beautiful in that, and so much part of the series. And I'm quite a visual person. When I'm writing, I'm imagining what's happening in my head as if it was a film or a TV program. Um, and I think St Andrews is such a beautiful city. I think it's the second oldest university in the UK and one of the oldest in the world. It's got all these lovely ancient sandstone buildings. It's got a ruined cathedral, a big tower, lots of history, ghosts. Um, and there's all these students and academics and researchers, and there's the most famous golf course in the world. So we have golf tourism. And it just struck me as there's so much potential there with this real mix of people, and the locals who have to kind of put up with this influx of students, during term time, and the tourists and the golfers and everything. And then every so often the Open will come to St Andrews and the town just explodes. So I just thought there's a lot of potential there. And because I live quite close to it, I can pop along and kind of have a look and just kind of walk around and get a feel for something. I made a huge mistake in my first book, huge. I fixed it, it's not there anymore. But I had written this book based on the old location of the police station, which was in North Street. And it's way, way across town now. And I was just kind of on Google Street View one night thinking, I wonder what's next door to the police station. I'll just check, I'll just have a look. And it's not there anymore. I had to rewrite a huge amount because I had kind of Claire coming out of the station and seeing something that takes place in North Street. And that just clearly couldn't happen. So I'm glad I discovered before it went to print. Otherwise, I would have had letters.
You would, because I was going to say people would have picked up on that, wouldn't they? Yeah. Patsy says she's been reading T.F. Muir. I literally just bought a T.F. Muir book.
Oh, excellent.
I haven't read them before, so that's
good fun.
Primarily because the policeman has my old surname.
Has your
old surname? I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Okay. Gilchrist, yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Sorry, I was trying to remember. Yeah.
But yeah, Patsy says she knows the streets of St Andrews. I think
it's a lovely town. The only problem I have with it is that I've just written my 9th book, and honestly, I'm running out of places to leave bodies and to kind of have suspects and people to be interviewed. It's not that big a town, and a lot of it is owned by the university. So the housing is collected in probably just a couple of areas. And it's hard not to be repetitive. There's a very long street in St Andrews called Lamon Drive, and that I keep having people living in Lamon Drive because I don't know where else to put them. So I'm spreading out a bit out of the town to kind of other places around about.
You're not tempted to sort of, because having said all that, you've not ever sort of built a story around sort of like the university overly or the Open, have you? You're not tempted to build in a big touristy event?
Well, thereby hangs a tale. So naming no names, you understand, and this is just between us, obviously, because no one's listening. I did actually write to a certain very famous university, which I won't name, in the town, which is called St Andrews. And I said to them, just checking, how would you feel about being featured in one of my books? This is who I am. This is what I do. This is the kind of thing I write. And back came the most legal letter, which was saying that they would basically want to have sight of the whole book before it went to print, so that they could go through it and make any changes that they thought. And I thought, I could just imagine me telling my publisher that. So I thought, nah, you're not getting to be in any of my books. So I have sort of referred to university buildings and things like that, but I'll never kill anybody on their premises because they don't deserve it. The other one was a certain very famous hotel, which is near a very famous golf course, the golf course being known as the Old Course. So anyway, this very famous hotel, I wrote to them as well and said, here I am, this is what I do, blah, 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 same old thing. They wrote back and said, oh, how exciting, we would love to be featured in a novel. Now, however, no member of staff, no guest or no visitor to the hotel for any reason at all is to be involved in a crime or to be a victim or a perpetrator of a crime. No crime is to take place on the premises. We don't want any bodies or anything. And I'm thinking, what do you think I'm writing here? Little House on the Prairie. So for that reason, in the first book, I made up my own hotel. And that's where all the big events take place. So I try to use real places when I can. And I do like to ask as well, because you never know if someone's going to take offence. So if I'm going to use a real cafe, restaurant, bar, whatever, I will ask them. And if they don't give permission, then I don't. Unless it's just a case of Claire's walking past, that's fine, But if I'm going to have somebody working on the premises or something takes place on the premises, then I always ask to be on the safe side. And mostly they say, I have some very funny, there's an ice cream shop in St Andrews called Giannetta's, which is now officially my favourite ice cream shop, because when I asked them, the owner said, oh, we'd love to be in a book, but the only condition is you have to say how handsome and virile the owner is. So they get in.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. But no, I wrote to the Royal and Ancient Golf Club, I don't mind naming them, and asked if I could use them, and they never wrote back. So I shut the golf course in book 2.
Fair enough.
I can. So
how do you keep the ideas fresh throughout, 8, 9 books in? How do you keep coming up with such new ideas? Because I don't think they're your standard police procedural yours. They are that, but they always have quite an interesting crime.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear, because that's kind of what I'm aiming for. When I'm reading, I like books where I learn something. And so if I can teach myself something and have something interesting for the reader, then I like to do that. The last book, which is called A Blind Eye, had something to do with a motor vehicle in it. And that was great fun to research. And in fact, if anybody reads the book and thinks that couldn't be done, yes, it can. Because I spoke to an engineer who works at a large, very famous motor company, and this is something that they're concerned about. So I did my research on that. If I can come up with something, that was quite a quirky thing. If I can come up with something like that, then I will. But I think it is more about the motivation behind the crimes, rather than coming up with an interesting way to kill someone, which, eventually you sort of run out of. Most people who are murdered are either stabbed or just punched and kicked, or maybe hit their head, that sort of thing. So you can't always come up with odd ways of killing someone that you've never done before, but it's about finding the story behind it. And my editor is very hot on, there must be a reason for something. She doesn't just like random killings. So there has to be some reason that person would do that. And that's where the inventiveness comes in, if you like. I try to think, what could be behind this? And if it's something that I haven't done before, then that's great. I do have a list of potential crimes that I refer to when I'm starting a new book. And anytime I see something in the newspaper or on TV or the news or whatever, I'll write that down. And when I'm writing a new book, I'll have a look at that list. It's about 9 pages now. Not all crimes. There's a list of crimes. There's a list of potential criminals. detection methods, that kind of thing. And I'll have lots of technical information as well. And people are so willing to share information. They're just incredibly kind. I sort of had somebody telling me all about the river police and things like that, what they do. It's amazing the stuff that people are happy to share. But I'm also now doing a course on Thursday evenings with Strathclyde University, which is a forensic sciences. I think it's called Forensic Medical, Legal, and Scientific course, something like that. And it's 30 lectures on Thursday nights for a whole sort of academic year. I'm in semester 2 or term 2. And it covers different aspects of there's been drowning, there's been fires, there's been I would say poison. That's not the right word. There's another, a more scientific, like ingesting substances or something like that. There's one coming up on forensic odontology, which I think is teeth, insects and things. All of that. I find it just absolutely fascinating. So if you can grab a podcast or anything like that, there's always ideas to be gleaned from there. But I'll run out of ideas eventually.
But I genuinely think that, and like the relationships between the team and Claire's relationships in the stories are like what keep you coming back to series. Is like
That's
my
great.
favorite series are always the ones where you gel with like the characters and you want to know what's going to happen to them next, and then like you keep going back to read the story as well.
I try to make them real people, as and kind of normal people as well, because although I've given Claire a bit of a backstory, I don't really want her to be this troubled individual who's always struggling against life. I want her struggles to be the small struggles that we all have. Like, oh gosh, it's 11 o'clock at night and I don't have any milk for my tea. Or, just little niggles. Or she's worried about, I think the book I've just written, she's a bit worried about her father because he's getting older. And just the everyday stuff, because I think that maybe helps people identify with the characters if they recognise something of their own experience. I don't know.
I like the last one where she got a bit worried that she might be getting into jazz.
I have suffered. I have suffered at jazz concerts because my partner likes jazz, and we go along, and I just think, I feel like Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. I wish I could shut my eyes and draw eyes on them. I could just pretend I'm awake. And when the drummer goes off on one, and it's and I'm like, oh, and then the saxophonist takes over, and he does 5 minutes, and I'm just thinking, right, what do I need to do when I get home? And so I thought, yeah, jazz is getting a hit.
Sarah Blackburn's asked you what your internet search history says about you.
It's disgusting, Sarah. Absolutely shocking. But I keep thinking I've got the evidence to show the police of 8 published books. So this is why I'm doing it. I mean, there are some things that I would never search. I would never search how to make a bomb, for example, because I have a feeling somebody somewhere might be watching, and that might get flagged up. I don't know.
They deliberately don't tell you how to make them.
No. Well, I hope not. I'm sure somebody on the dark web probably does. I've never gone on the dark web, and I don't intend to. I'm a bit afraid, but I use it all the time in the books. There's some things that I will search for. Things like how long does a body take to come up when it drowns and stuff like that. And but I'll also ask a lot of people things. Usually verbally, so that there's no paper trail, so that I can kind of say, what happens when a car goes into the river, or what would the injuries be like if somebody falls from a great height, just things like that, rather than searching too much. But yes, the search history is a bit dark. But I also search for shoes, and jumpers and things as well.
I think everyone can have a crazy search history, can't
Oh,
they?
yeah.
Like, I'm a science teacher. I'm sure some of the things I've searched have hit some watch lists at times.
We've all got a darker side, haven't we?
Yeah. And I once owned fuse wire. I had fuse wire that I bought on Amazon because it suggested it with some other things I was buying. And I was like, I'm sure this would put me on some kind of watch list. Right?
You're a teacher too. Shocking.
Monique, sorry, wanted to know if you start all your research. Do you do all your research before you start writing?
About 2/3 of it, I would say, Monique, because I do plan my books. So if I'm going to be killing someone in a particular way, or for example, in one of the books, book 5, next in line, the one that you've to read or have last
No,
read,
I got that one. Next in
so
line.
next in line, someone is shot by a high-powered rifle, and I did a lot of research on that. Funnily enough, I was talking to my son about it today because he knows about such things, and he was the first one I went to. And then when I kind of knew what sort of weapon my perpetrator could get their hands on, I then started looking at how the weapon would be used. I watched some very scary videos on YouTube. There are some mad people out there. Um, and so all of that was in place. But inevitably, even though I plan my books quite well, as you write, something comes up and you think, oh, I didn't know about that. I didn't know I was going to put that in. You end up doing another little bit of research. The guns actually was the one time when, if I could have done or would have done, and I wouldn't, I wanted to reply to a negative review because this person said, there's no way anybody could shoot a person dead in one shot for, without, it just couldn't be done. And I thought, yes, it can, because I've researched it and I can tell you. And I looked at the range of the weapon. I looked at the distance between the targets. I looked at the relative height. I allowed for the Coriolis effect of the earth. I made it that there was no wind. I gave the sniper a history of an experience with guns and all that. I covered every base, and that review really annoyed me. Normally, I don't let reviews bug me, but that one did because I thought you're just wrong. I'd also spoken to 2 soldiers as well who were riflemen. I had done my research. I reckon I could join the army and be a sniper. I'm a bit short, but anyway. So yeah, I do about most of the research, and then sometimes you'll end up writing something that's not planned, and I'll have to go off to the side and research that. But most of it I do.
I think things with guns can be tricky, can't they, for people to get right? But I do believe you did. I'm not.
Oh yes, yeah. We all have our hobby horses, and I guess if somebody wrote something that I knew a lot about, then I would maybe be reading it more carefully and looking for a mistake.
Yeah,
Human.
my dad has wee rants about things like guns, and because he was a soldier, and um, other things, technical things that he gets annoyed about. That you don't ever want to set him off on those little rants.
But the other thing I think is we're making stuff up, and if
and,
if it was true to life, it would be dull.
and it's okay to be fictional. It's okay to blur the lines a bit. I think I want it to be as accurate as it can be, but if someone changed a little bit, it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it. Because police work is tedious and repetitive, and it's knocking on the same doors again and again and again. And also, a police inquiry is drawn out. Usually, if it's a murder inquiry, quite often they'll know who the perpetrator. Most people are murdered by someone they know, but if it's like one of my books where it's a stranger or where the police can't find an obvious person, that will take months to investigate properly because you need to make sure that you get all your evidence legally and fairly. There's a lot of paperwork documenting things and kind of interviewing people, and it's a long, drawn out, tedious process, and nobody would read that. So we do, as you say, we blur the lines.
But you do talk about that a little bit because Claire does have moments where she's like, I need to add this to the warrant. We're not going to do this way because we're going to do it above board. Like we could look at this now, but we're not going to because we need to
Yeah,
be able to submit
yeah.
it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I try not to annoy police officers and the one thing that I do that is not correct is the speed with which forensic tests are turned around. Claire can beg a favour from long-suffering Raymond, the forensic man, and he'll sometimes turn DNA around by the end of the day or the next day. And in reality, these things would just join a long pile of things waiting to be done. And toxicology tests can take weeks. So I kind of have to blur that a little bit. That's a bit unrealistic. But the alternative to that is doing a timeline over weeks or months. And I don't know how I would keep the momentum going. I'm not sure. I've never tried that. I tend to do my books over quite a short space of time. You get what happens today, then you get what happens tomorrow, then the next day. And sometimes it will be morning on one day, and then you'll get afternoon, and then you'll get late afternoon, then you might get evening if it's a busy day and there's lots happening. So I've never done a kind of extended timeline. That would be quite a different thing. I think might try it sometime.
Donna's asked if you've given any of your series characters a trait or characteristic at the beginning that you later regretted.
That's a good question, Donna. I think the way I started with Raymond the forensic, someone said to me, why not make him a bit kind of really enthusiastic and quite bright and bubbly and have a look at this is amazing and stuff like that. And I kind of started out with that and See Them Run, and I've toned that down. I've made him a bit more jaded, which I think might happen with a job. You're enthusiastic on day one, and it's the reality sinks in. The one thing that I kind of do regret, and I'm trying not to give away spoilers here, is how Claire acquires her dog. Because if you read any book and then except book one, and you then go back to book one, then there's a spoiler in there. So I didn't plan that. In my defence, that just happened. I was writing a chapter and I heard Jim saying, "Oh, there's a dog running around as well," where someone had been killed, and the dog is taken to the station to be looked after. And I didn't really plan that, and I didn't really plan for Claire to end up with the dog. But these things happen. Traits. Sorry, yeah.
Well, you're like the legendary planner. How did you not plan for that?
No, I know. Well, here's the thing: the legendary planner did not plan book one. Because book one is the best book you'll ever write. Not my book one, anybody's first book, because you don't have a deadline. You don't have anybody nipping your head. You're not trying to write one book and do edits for another and publicize a third. You've got all the time in the world, and you can make that book as good as you really want it to be. So I knew what the premise of the book was. I knew who the killer was and why, and I knew there was going to be up to 5 potential victims. But I hadn't really planned the book as such. It was only when I got a contract that I realised I need to know what I'm doing here. And I can't fly by the seat of my pants. I just wouldn't sleep at night. So now that because when you get a contract, you get deadlines. And, this book has to be with your editor by the 1st of whatever. And so in order to avoid being stressed by that, I plan. And I think the most planned book I ever wrote was book 3, Lies to Tell. I think because I plan on PowerPoint and I have 1 slide per scene, I had the biggest number of slides ever. It was about 72 slides for that. And that was because I had so many different things going on in that book. I thought, I need to get this down. And since then, I thought, I like this PowerPoint idea. This works really well. And that's how it's gone since then.
Sarah's asking if there's any hints you can give us for book 9.
For book 9. Bit difficult, really, because I've not had my edits yet, so I don't know what's going to stay in and what's going to stay out. I'm trying to think what it's about. I'm being serious here because I'm now starting to promote Bridges to Burn, and I can't actually remember. Oh, I can remember. Yes, I know what it's about. What can I tell you? Okay. I've given St Andrews a nightclub, and curiously enough, this is weird. It's very hard to find any spare ground in St Andrews because if it sits still for any length of time, it's sold to a developer for an absolute fortune because house prices there are ridiculous. They're so expensive. And I had this spare bit of ground, and it was on a sloping site, and I thought, it's not huge. They're probably not going to build on that. And the next time I went to St Andrews, blow me, they've got it fenced off. And I thought, I hope it's a nightclub. Anyway, so there's a nightclub in it, and I can't tell you the first thing, but I can say that someone who works at the nightclub dies, and Claire has to investigate his death. So that's it. That's all you're getting.
Fair enough. I was going to say, apart from... No, that would be a spoiler. Has the nightclub got a Scotty dog? Patsy says.
Has the nightclub got
a Scotty dog?
A Scotty dog. Oh, I wish. I should have done that, shouldn't I? The nightclub at the moment is called Retros because it plays music from back in the day, 70s, 80s, 90s sort of thing. And there is the return of a character who only appears now and then in the books.
There used to be this epic nightclub in Leeds where I live that played 80s music, and it cost you 80 pence to get in.
Fantastic.
And the drinks were like 80 pence a shot because it was an 80s night.
I love that. What a great idea.
It had a revolving dance floor. It was the cheesiest place that has ever existed.
That sounds wonderful.
You said retros and my mind went there.
There's a nightclub in near me, just about 5-6 miles away, and they've started doing Sunday afternoon, early evening discos for over 30s only. And it's for people that want to go in, have a dance, have a boogie, and then get the bus home and be in your jammies for 9 o'clock. I just think it's a brilliant idea. So you can do, I think it's 2:30 to 7:30 or something like that, or 8 o'clock. And so that, you don't need to queue up for a taxi at 3 a.m. You can even go and get a kebab, get on the bus and get home. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to do it sometime.
It sounds great. I saw a news article about it. I was just like, that's brilliant. What an idea.
I'm trying to remember what it's called because I was in Edinburgh for a couple of days, and I saw that they're having one as well. So I'm guessing it's maybe a franchise or something that somebody's come up with, and there's various clubs are doing it. It sounds great.
Donna has said, oh God, in the 90s is retro now.
I'm not even going to talk about what's retro to me.
Depressingly, someone I work with told me that when I left university, they were 3. And I was like, I feel so old. You did not need that conversation. No, you should be banned, shouldn't you, from saying that kind of stuff? Like, no, it's not all right.
Anyway.
No, we got distracted. But yeah, no, I've got next in line A Blind Eye and Bridges to Burn were the 3 I have read in the last few days. I'm on a Marion Todd binge of books.
Oh, that's really kind of you because you must have so many books to read. I don't know how you do it. Your reading rate is phenomenal.
I do have quite a pile of books to read. I'm trying to read things that aren't Marion. Well, I don't have any Marion Todd books left now. I've finished all the ones I had. So I've got to read something else.
Yeah, you're officially allowed to take a break.
Yes, I'm officially allowed to read a different book. But I'm now excited for book 9. Do you have an idea of how many you're going to write? Do you have like an end point?
No,
Will we have quite answers about who Claire's going to end up with? Things like that.
who knows? I don't sort of have an end point for Claire that I think one day that's where I'm shooting. And I genuinely don't know how many Claires I'll write. I really don't. But I think I'll carry on writing her as long as I still enjoy it, and as long as I think I can make stories that are interesting and not be writing the same book again and again and again. And I think that's where I rely on my editor to kind of tell me that. But she's great fun. I love writing her, and I love writing Chris. He just gets, and then occasionally you bring in a character like Tony McAvity, who's just awful. So he's quite good fun to write. I think he's back in Bridges to Burn. He's back in Bridges to Burn.
Yeah.
And I started out trying very hard not to like Tony and trying to make him this really unlikable character, but I can't help it. He's wormed his way around me. And I had a comment from an editor. I think it was an external. I think it was a copy editor, and it was something that Tony had said, and she wrote a comment in the side. They use track changes, so you get these little bubbles with comments. And she wrote a comment in the side saying, "I just laughed out loud at what Tony said." And I replied to her saying, "Yep, that's how he gets into your head." So as long as I'm having fun with stuff like that, then I'll keep going.
There was an excellent moment where someone gets like a little bit of revenge on Tony in a book, one of the books.
That's right. That
recently.
Zoe did that.
And I was like, this is brilliant.
Well, as long as this is just between us, I know someone who did that. And that's why that made it into the book. And it wasn't even baked in a cake. It was served in a stew.
Ooh.
I know. So, yep. most of what goes into the books, apart from the murders, things like that, are things that I have come across. Maybe not done myself, but people have told me that they've done, and I thought, oh, that's going in a book.
Alex is with me. He says he understands why I binged your books. He loves the series too.
Oh, thank you, Alex.
Thanks for such an entertaining character. See, wonderful. Like you, good taste. Donna said, "Are you tempted, like so many authors seem to be at the moment, to start a new series? A new series or a standalone?"
I mean, I'd love to do something a little bit different. There's two things that sort of are a problem with that. The one thing is that I have quite a tight schedule with my publisher. I have been writing a book every 9 months, and that's quite, it takes me, let me think, probably about 6 months beginning to end to turn out a book. So there'll be about 6 weeks planning, and then there'll be about 3 to 4 months writing. And then there'll be another month or 3 weeks of tidying it up before I send it in. And you would think, well, that's great, you've got 3 months off, but you don't, because edits arrive within 3 weeks, and in the meantime you're promoting the last book, and then you're being asked about titles and covers, and then more edits arrive, and in the meantime they're asking what the next book's going to be about. So that doesn't leave much time to do something different. I love the idea of starting another series, and I've sort of got 1 or 2 ideas that bounce around in my head. But I don't know if I could juggle Claire and something else at the same time. And it makes sense to keep going with Claire as long as she's still popular. If the interest in the series started to wane, or if I went off the boil or the books weren't as good, then yeah, I might do something. Creatively, I'd love to do something different. Practically, not so easy.
Fair enough.
I'm full of admiration for people that can juggle different series. And I don't know if anybody out there has read B.P. Walter's books, but he can be writing more than one at a time. And that just messes with my head. I think he does a bit and then he thinks, oh, I'm bored with that. So he goes on to another book and then he goes back to it. I had 2 days away in Edinburgh, and if I'd been writing a book, I wouldn't have known what I was doing when I came back. So yeah, I guess you maybe have that sort of brain, you find it easier.
Monique has said your books would make a fantastic TV series. Any chance that might happen?
Oh, Monique, Monique, Monique. How long do you have? Okay, here comes a sad tale. The Give my agents their due; they have tried. Um, what they get back is that the police procedural TV market is swamped at the moment, and the books need to have something that makes them stand out. So they did quote me a couple of examples, and they've both just gone right out of my head. It was one series that was based around the Troubles in Northern Ireland. I've forgotten the name of, and there was another example that they gave me. And I think the thing about my books is that hopefully they're nice, comfortable, easy reads. They're not too threatening, and they probably don't have, apart from the setting, which I think is pretty gorgeous, they don't have anything about them that stand out, that gives them an edge or a different angle. And I think that's what producers are looking for just now. So I can see them on TV without a doubt. I can think who I would like to play them, the characters and all the rest of it. I can imagine, I can see the opening titles. I know the music I would have for it. The whole thing is in my head. But I can getting someone to make it is another thing altogether. I have had a couple of producers look at them and they like the books, but they're just not different enough from what's out there already. So it may happen one day, it may not.
They'd be so watchful. Sarah did ask if you had any idea who would play Claire.
Well, I do, but you may not know. I'm good friends with an actress or actor called Helen Derbyshire, who's Fife-based, and she narrates my audiobooks, and she's always been my Claire. But if you're looking for someone who's more well known, so I could sort of tell you about my picture in my head, if you could imagine a young Kelly MacDonald, so Kelly MacDonald 20 years ago, she would be a great Claire. And the other one, Morven Christie, again, 20 years ago, someone like that. And then there's an actress from Inverness whose name has just gone right out of my head, Karen Gillan. She'd make a great Claire. Chris, I can't remember who I had down for Chris. I genuinely can't remember. I did do a thing once. I put together a treatment for a production company with actors. Oh, I know who Chris was, but I can't remember his name. He made a one-off appearance in a Scottish comedy called Two Doors Down, and he played the brother of a big kind of like dopey character called Alan, and he came in playing Alan's brother. But I've actually forgotten his name at the moment. Honestly, I'm hopeless. Worst guest ever.
You're the best guest.
But yeah, what I'll try and do is if I can find a copy of the treatment that I did for this production company, then I'll paste in who all the people were. I'll paste in photos on Twitter or Facebook. Facebook, obviously.
I saw a really interesting chat at my local bookstore with Anthony Johnston last week. Yeah, last week. And he was saying that he doesn't like to tell people who he would cast because the minute that they get cast, people will find an interview, and if you've said someone different, it'll be everywhere.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really, like, it's not something I would have thought about, but I thought that was a really interesting kind of point that he would know that because he's gone through the process of people being cast, hasn't he? And like his.
Yeah, I understand that. That makes sense. But I think I feel so far away from my books ever being on TV that I think.
No, I mean, you're not the only person who does. Like Ellie G's got like ideas of who would play hers, and like lots of authors will tell you. It's just I've never heard that as an answer for that question, if you know what I mean. Normally, it's people have got an answer, haven't they? And he was just like, I'm not going to say because. And I thought that was
No.
the answer.
And the other thing is that I think the reader has a picture in their own head of what they might look like. Well, some might not. And so you don't necessarily want to spoil that. I think, is it Ian Rankin that has never described Rebus? I can't remember it. Maybe he isn't.
I know he did say that. I think he was on with Sam a while ago, and he did say something like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't describe people. And I mean, sometimes people are weird like me and don't get pictures in their heads.
Oh, don't you?
No.
Right. Gosh. That's so interesting because it's about the only way I can think. Yeah, no, somebody else was talking about that the other day. It's J.D. Kirk. He can't visualize things in his head either, which I think is incredible because he's so prolific. He must. I don't know how you could write a book without having a think. But then that's because we're all different. We're all individuals and we all have our own way of doing it. And people will sometimes say, oh, I'm going to try your way of doing it. And then they'll always say it doesn't work. I think it's because I've just carved it out for me.
Yeah, you've got to do the things that work for you, haven't you? Yeah. Monique says there's a guy from 2 Doors Down called Martin McCormick.
That's the one. That's him. Yep, that's my Chris. Well, he's a sort of yeah. Sometimes it's him, and sometimes it's one of the actors in one of those Prime Suspect series. Yes, Martin McCormick. That's the one. He played Alan's brother, and he was getting married to Carol Ann. And the episode where it's just leading up to the wedding is my favourite. It just makes me laugh so much. The way he plays it is just so deadpan. Just absolutely emotionless. It's so funny.
I like Chris's ongoing adventure to hide his biscuits. Places. Chris in the story, he likes hiding his biscuits, doesn't he, in random places?
Are we talking about the same series?
No, not 2 Doors Down.
Oh.
You're
Chris!
I've never watched the series.
Yes, Chris. Well, the wagon wheels. I used to work for a life assurance company years and years ago, and it was in the 80s when there was boom investments. And honestly, I'm not wise, am I? Everybody was trying to sell pensions and investments, and it was a real boom time. And I worked in the office, and the salesman used to go out and they would visit financial advisors and building societies and try to say, look, this is our new product. If you've got anybody that's got money to invest, they might want to think about this. And one of the guys went into a building society one day in a meeting with the manager, and I'm thinking bank manager, like 3-piece suit and a tie up to here. This guy's got his feet up on the desk and he says to the insurance salesman, in you come. Do you want a wagon wheel? And it was just the most, unbuilding society manager like thing ever. Do you want a wagon wheel? These great clunky biscuits, because they used to be a lot bigger than they are now. They're tiny now. And it just always stuck in my head. And I thought, yeah, when I was suddenly writing it, here was Chris eating wagon wheel biscuits. And then once he gets in tow with Sarah, and she's quite, she does veganuary and things like that. She's trying to be very healthy, and Chris is trying to sneak in a fish supper. So obviously he has to hide the wagon wheels because Sarah doesn't approve. So someone said to me about Bridges to Burn, I just hope there's wagon wheels in this one. And so I went to the original Word document and I did a search, and there's 7 occurrences of wagon wheels in it.
Yeah, he's always got a new hiding place, hasn't he? I like them. They're quite inventive. Like this is good use of like hiding of wagon wheels.
I have worked in a place where they used to steal my milk. And and I couldn't really hide that out of the fridge. But other people used to just hide my tea bags, so it was like a huge open plan workroom. So I thought, right, okay, and I had all sorts of hiding places. So there's a bit of me and Chris.
Right, finishes off with, before you finishes off with a reminder of your books, finishes off with what you've read recently and really enjoyed.
Right, okay.
My
So
answer is easy. It's just Marion Todd books.
I'm just coming to the I'm just coming to the end of an advanced copy of J.M. Hewitt's The Perfect Village, which is out next month, I think. I think it's in April. And it's just it's so good. It's about this character who it goes back and forward in time, and in the back she's got this horrible husband. It's a coercive, control, abusive relationship. And in the future, the husband's not around, so you're not quite sure where he's gone. And she wanted to have children. She was fostering children, then they were taken away because the husband made it look like she was really not looking after them. And then suddenly these two children turn up on her door, and what does she do? And in the meantime, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on in the village. I'm about 85% through, and that's going to be what tonight when I come off here. And I've also been listening to, I love an audiobook, and the one that I've just finished, let me just check what it's called. Oh, I know what it's called. It's called The Fall by Gilly McMillan. And it's about a lottery winner who's found dead in his swimming pool by his wife. And the wife rushes to get the neighbours, and the neighbours give her the housekeeper to look after her while they go and try and get him out of the pool and see if he can be saved. And apart from them and the two police officers who investigate his death, that is almost it. And the layers of intrigue are just, it just makes me think I'll just give up. And I've just started reading T.M. Logan's Trust Me, about a woman who's given a baby to hold on a train while the baby's mother goes and takes a phone call. The train pulls into a station, and a minute later, she's thinking, that's a long phone call. And the baby's mother walks past on the platform, and there's a note inside saying, trust no one and don't trust the police, and note inside the baby bag. So she's left holding the baby, quite literally. So that's my 3 recommendations. T.M. Logan, Trust Me, Gilly McMillan, The Fall, and next month, J.M. Hewitt, The Perfect Village. And after The Perfect Village, I'm going on to Sheila Bugler's new one, which is called Dark Road Home. Dark Road Home, I think it is. I've just got a copy of that to read, and that's out next month as well. So very excited.
Marvellous. And then finishes off with a reminder of what people are going to go away and buy.
Okay, so the Detective Claire Mackay crime series is now up to book 8, and this is book 8. Oops. It's called Bridges to Burn. It's set in St Andrews in Scotland, and it sees Claire investigating the suicide of a teenage girl who's found dead in the grounds of her school. And then across town, a report comes in of an older man being exploited by a younger woman, and she's got to divide herself between these 2 cases.
And it's a brilliant read.
Thank you. That's very kind. And thank you so much for inviting me to chat. I've had such a lovely time.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. And hello to everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. And it's been lovely having your questions. They've all been great. It's really interesting.
You're welcome back anytime.